There was just sky's the limit for a 21-year-old that was talented and that everybody loved. I'm Kevin Harris's dad. Okay, he's my son and he was named after me. It was gonna be a Sunday like any other, even if he didn't go to church that day. He was naive. Kevin, trusting soul, maybe a little too much. He'd say, "Why you gotta tell everybody I'm your son?" I said, "Because I'm proud of you." My best friend, my teammate. I haven't been able to watch a father take his son to the park with a ball, for a while, so. He was making a name for himself. As I heard where Britney and Rihanna actually were interested in some of his material.
Kevin always had it. The beats were great. I knew he was gonna make it. Some people have that thing where it's like you're relentless to a point where nothing can stop you. The stuff that he would send me was a lot of like an R&B feel mixed with like pop. Pop and hip hop. Church. Like gospel, like those chords.
A lot of things were happening too quickly.
We can get it poppin', we can get it poppin'.
Videos, camera shoots, Ice Cube track. And he went to that doggone studio that night. And that happened.
Last day, and he kissed me on my left cheek. He hugged me, and he just held me, and I said, "What's wrong, Kevin?" And he said, "Nothing, Mom." He said, "Everything's just happening so fast, I feel like something's going to happen." I said, "Don't think like that."
10 to 17 shots, 2 different handguns. How much do you have to kill him? A lot of suspicious things happened that night. The clues are absolutely out there. We just need that one piece, that one smoking gun.
Time is of the essence. I hate how long my breath takes. Those are the words of Kevin Harris on his Twitter account in the summer of 2009. Kevin was just 21 when he was gunned down shortly after 8 p.m. on a September Sunday that same year. He had been sitting in his car alone in Inglewood, California, a small city in Los Angeles, close to LAX.
I got a call at 9:15. Are you at the hospital? I said, for what? What happened? What's wrong? Kevin's been shot.
Kevin Harris Sr. is Kevin's dad.
We ran every light just to be told that we couldn't see him.
I was in denial.
Catherine is his mother.
The night that he was murdered, and I do say murdered, people like to say he passed. He did pass on, but someone actually took the time to murder him.
The Harrises couldn't believe that somebody wanted their son dead.
This is
Kevin.
this was during the photo shoot that they had, so
Handsome, confident.
very confident.
Tell me about your angel.
Our angel, she called him Angel Face.
His mother?
His mother.
I wish you could have met him. He was a beautiful man.
And he was still close with his childhood friends, like Cameron Woods.
We've known each other since we were like 2, 3 years old. We continue going to the same school with each other all the way to here.
It's still so fresh.
Yeah, hold on, sorry.
What are you thinking?
I don't want to cry. It's a little harder.
A little.
Yeah.
It's okay. You know that, right? What do you miss most about him?
His smile, his generosity. Never heard anybody tell me anything bad about him, say anything bad about him. Never really heard him say anything bad about anyone. Besides maybe a few, no one's perfect. But he was close. He was close to that.
The Harrises led by example, working hard, Dad at the LA airport and selling cars, and Mom working retail. They were regulars in church, and they sent Kevin to a Catholic school.
She and I were like helicopter parents, under surveillance at all times.
As a form of protection.
Yes, if he hadn't come home at a certain time, I would text a question mark. Just knowing the possible hearts that lay out there in the street.
One of Kevin's hobbies, Cameron says, was hanging out with his mom.
Spending time with his mom.
Really?
Yeah, he loved, yeah.
Wait. A teenager enjoying spending time with his parents?
I don't know if I should say it, but he was kind of like a mama's boy, but I mean, I'm a mama's boy, so.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Kevin was a perfect date.
Jasmine Tanner was Kevin's high school sweetheart.
Not really a huge dancer, but he had his little two-step that he would do. Everything that he did was from a very loving place.
The Harrises kept their son involved in sports, especially basketball.
I'll take you through my house right now, right here in my room.
But his real calling was music. Much of the music you're hearing in this broadcast is his.
See, that's all you need right here is a little kit right here. See, turn up the music for a second. See, you got all that. Got the turntables. Get your mix on.
He taught himself to play.
He taught himself. He had rock, he had classics, he had jazz, East Indian music.
Soon after high school graduation, Kevin landed a gig apprenticing at a local music studio.
Yeah, he started bobbing that head, and then the next thing you know, he's like, oh, well, listen to this, and then he'll click something. It's like going to the next level.
By the summer of 2009, he'd stacked up hundreds of hours in the studio. He began breaking into the Los Angeles hip-hop scene.
But he just wanted to be the best producer ever.
Yeah, that's about it, y'all.
Kevin's vibe was he was comfortable with himself.
Sonia Teklai is a poet and singer, one of a number of artists working with Kevin.
I had never felt comfortable in recording sessions until my sessions with him. And a lot of times, guys are just trying to get at girls and do all these things, but he stayed in his lane. He was focused on his work.
As Kevin's career picked up speed, he bragged about working at a big fancy studio where Michael Jackson once recorded Thriller.
And he was like right there. Like a pinball, and you get your ball ready, and you pull it back, and then you let go.
But everything would soon come to an abrupt and violent end.
My naive, loving son probably just could have been possibly sleeping with the enemy and had no idea.
To this day, no one has been charged for the murder of Kevin Harris.
They thought we're gonna do this sneaky stuff here and we'll get away with it. They effed with the wrong father this time.
Kevin Harris Sr. is determined to change that. He spent the past 11 years seeking justice for his namesake.
I never got to speak to Kevin that day at all. I went to work at 9 a.m. He was still asleep, and I looked in on him and I left.
That Sunday morning in the summer of 2009, Kevin shared breakfast with his mother, Catherine.
I still have the plate, the paper, the napkin, the last carton of juice. I have all of that from that day.
You've memorialized him.
I just love him. I love him.
Retracing their son's steps, the Harrises say nothing seemed unusual that day.
From what I hear, at some point he wound up at a Pop Warner football game, and then later on he went to his aunt's.
Karen Stadden is the last known person to see Kevin alive.
He was his regular happy-go-lucky self. Hi, Auntie. How you doing? What'd you cook? And he stayed, we ate, we laughed, we talked.
And after a few hours, Kevin left saying he was headed to the music studio.
I said, Kevin, don't go. We're having too much fun. I don't want you to go yet. And he said, Auntie, I have to go because the studio is quiet. No one's there. I can record. I can go over some things. I can write. I can perfect what I'm working on. And we hugged each other, and he was out the door.
He drove to the studio in his beloved green Camaro. He was supposed to meet up with a friend, known in the community as a wannabe rapper. But that friend was a no-show.
A lot of suspicious things happened that night.
The studio was in a converted garage in a residential neighborhood. Kevin arrived, but never made it out of his car. He was shot multiple times from 2 different guns.
I never expected anything like this to happen to Kevin.
Kevin's friend Jasmine says he didn't have a chance.
To find out that he was shot outside the studio that he loved to go to so much, it was just like, nowhere is safe.
The Harrises went to the crime scene no more than 3 hours after their son had been shot. The police were already gone.
It was already cleaned up. It was so weird and strange. It was like, why is this crime scene already done? Car was gone, everything. It seems as if they were more expeditious in cleaning up their crime scene than they were in trying to find out who did this within the proverbial 24 to 48 hours. That's what it seemed like.
Catherine took what was left behind.
I walked around in front of the studio, and I saw blood, wipe the blood up off the street, and the glass from his window was on the ground. And I used my hands as a broom to gather the glass.
This young man deserves better than what happened here.
There was early speculation that Kevin's death was gang-related, an assumption that upset his father.
You hear shot and killed, the first thing you want to say is, drive by, was he in a gang? No. No, he wasn't. He was just a loving young man with a heart as big as his church.
Music journalist Ramon Duke says no matter how innocent the victim is, people assume a crime like this is gang-related.
Because he's a young black man.
So it's automatic?
Yeah, and specifically within that neighborhood, 100%.
Young black man shot.
In the music business, yeah. Those are all elements.
And the odds of solving crimes with those elements are slim. For one thing, witnesses can be hard to find.
People in these communities, they stick together. When these situations occur, they're like, I'm not dealing with the law enforcement. They weren't here to help us. Why are we gonna help them? I have seen people step forward, but the majority of the time, that doesn't happen.
Why?
A lot of times because they're afraid. That person still has to live in that neighborhood. There might be some retaliation. There's this mentality where it's like, just mind your own business.
As time passed, Kevin's parents felt that the police pushed their son's case to the back burner, even when they tried to help.
And they would tell me, just go home. Just go home. We'll take care of this.
We let the law enforcement handle it. Unfortunately, it didn't work. It was sat on.
The police told 48 Hours, quote, "Our hearts go out to the parents and family of Kevin. The Inglewood Police Department has done everything possible to bring closure and justice to the family." The Harrises continued to push for answers. They held memorials for Kevin, inviting the police and local officials. But the stress of losing their son took its toll.
The gun kills more than its intended victim, and it always will. And after he died, not right away, but a lot of everything that meant everything to our family was destroyed.
2 years after Kevin's murder, the Harrises ended their 23-year marriage. It was a dark time for Kevin Sr. He searched for solace. And he found it in church, a Baptist church in the Los Angeles community of Watts.
My heart is broken, but God has, piece by piece, put it back together.
Pastor Winford Bell helped the heartbroken father channel his grief into a newfound purpose, speaking out against gun violence for Bell's organization, Silver Lining of Hope.
My heart has been ripped to smithereens. I really revel in this because it's medicine to my soul to speak about the loss of my son.
Kevin stepped up. When they kill your baby, it's few people that want to fight to fix it so that your baby or my baby or anybody else's baby doesn't suffer the same thing.
Now, more at peace with himself, Kevin Sr. found more will to keep up the long fight to find out who murdered his son. And he was about to get some unexpected help.
We're going to put as much time and energy as it takes. We will not stop. We will figure this out.
Kevin Harris Sr. continued to speak out. 6 years after his son's senseless murder, his heartbreaking story finally had an impact. The local police brought in the FBI to work the case.
When I heard I was going to get a call from the FBI, I felt that all my aggressiveness wasn't in vain.
Have you met the parents?
I have.
The parents are fantastic, and as soon as I met them, we immediately bonded, and they have begged us to just find the people that did this, and that's my commitment to them.
Vaviette Morgan is in charge of FBI criminal investigations in Los Angeles.
I'm vested, so we'll find them, and we'll hold them accountable. Welcome to the new FBI.
I think there was a tough case with, not a lot of evidence. There was no DNA, there was no actual physical touching.
FBI Special Agent Sean Sturley got the case. He started with the crime scene photos. And with what witnesses that did speak out saw, a dark sedan that pulled up next to Kevin Harris's Camaro. The shots were fired from that car.
We believe there were probably 3 people in the car, the driver and 2 shooters. They were approximately about 6 inches door to door, so close that the shell casings from the shooter's guns, 2 of them end up inside Kevin's car.
Also new to the case, former LA detective John Skaggs.
I know the streets and I know how to talk to people.
Where are you taking us?
Right now, we're going to the crime scene where Kevin was killed. There's a couple things I need to look at, and then there's a resident that I want to talk to.
Skaggs came out of retirement to work with the local cold case unit and assist the FBI.
So is this a hopeless case or a stalled case?
It is stalled and absolutely not hopeless.
And what's the difference?
Well, there's still clues that haven't been burned out.
This is the street where Kevin was murdered?
Exactly.
Detective Skaggs walks into the house attached to the music studio.
Hey, John Skaggs from Inglewood Police.
And comes out a half an hour later with owner Randy Thomas.
Hey,
Hi, how are you? I'm Michelle Miller. It's 48 Hours.
So Michelle had a really good talk with Randy. He was friends. He knew Kevin for about 4 years, and Kevin would use his studio for his music.
Randy says by the time he got outside that night, the shooters were gone.
I heard cap, cap, cap. I thought it was firecrackers. Then the neighbor came outside and said, somebody shot.
And you saw Kevin's car?
I saw the green Camaro and I said, oh my God. Oh my God. And the ambulance came in the fire truck and they pulled him out, tried to revive him, but it was bad.
To see him here on the street in front of your house.
Broke my heart. It's almost like someone had to have followed him here.
So you think it was someone he knew?
That I don't know, but I know that no one comes here on Sunday nights.
The new detectives confirmed what Kevin's parents and friends had said all along.
Kevin Harris was really quite a remarkable kid. We probably did somewhere close to 70 to 80 interviews. We could not find anybody who would say anything closely, remotely negative about him.
And they learned that in the months before his death, Kevin's career was on a roll. This studio was his home base.
There's a lot of steps. Be very careful.
Okay. So you have a sound mixer?
Right.
You have a sound booth?
Right. So this is where we do the music at. And Kevin had a key. He can come anytime he'd like to come.
In the summer of 2009, Kevin was becoming better known by his stage name, Track Bully.
I think he was just really positive about the way his life was going.
I mean, his name was Track Bully for...
Exactly, because his tracks was crazy.
Keep Chanel on your glasses.
One of the artists Kevin was closest with was Jizzle, a hip-hop poet and rapper seen in this video with Diddy.
I look at this picture and what do you see?
Oh man, that was just bro, and he was hungry. Like just trying to figure it out. He got the TV on his hat. That's for Track Bully.
But by then he was already like...
Lit, kinda.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was lit. And I used to go by Lady G at the time, so he'd be like, what's up, Lady G? Like, man, you gotta mess with me on the music, man. And so he finally, like, sent me a batch of beats.
We can get it poppin', 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 we can get it.
Jizzle and Kevin worked together on Poppin', a catchy tune they believed could break through and become a hit.
This is Poppin'.
This is Poppin'. Wow.
That's you?
Yeah, man.
Is that him right there?
Yeah. Track Bully right there.
Off to the side.
Yeah.
Kevin was clearly proud of that song. Jizzle may have been the star, but Kevin made sure everyone knew he was the force behind it. And then there was his triumph of scoring a really big sale. It was to hip-hop star Ice Cube, once again, proudly tweeting about his feat.
Right before he was killed, he had sold a track to Ice Cube. I mean, how big of a deal was that?
It's a very big deal. Ice Cube is a legend in music, not just hip-hop, it's music. It's a really big deal.
Kevin's career was skyrocketing, and his dad was feeling a little uneasy.
If I would have had a chance, I would have reeled him back in just a little bit.
Looking back, Kevin Sr. believes his son was playing with fire.
Put it this way, there's not this evil Grim Reaper with a hood that's just standing around on streets. Normally it's someone that you know or someone you've had an acquaintance with. A friend one day, enemy the next.
The new detectives continued to study the crime scene photos.
It's kind of like you see his life right there. I mean, high school basketball player, great outside shooter, his laptop and his hard drive with all his music. So in his car were all his loves, and horribly, that's where he died.
Since Kevin's reputation was golden, they wondered if his death could have been a case of mistaken identity. They learned Kevin wasn't the only one in town with a green Camaro.
There was an active gang member that lived less than 2 blocks away from Kevin at the time.
That gang member, they say, had a look-alike car.
I was able to interview him. The guy's changed his life, and he's told me about some of the stuff that he was doing back in that day that could easily be a cause for somebody to retaliate against anybody driving a green Camaro.
When you grow up in LA, no matter how sheltered you are or how strict your parents are, you're gonna run into the culture. It's no secret that Los Angeles does have a gang culture. Even though he wasn't in the streets, I think we all kind of know what that's like. You know, your parents can't protect you from everything.
But detectives now say they took a hard look at that mistaken identity theory and ruled it out. They believe that Kevin rolled down his window to talk to the people who drove up next to him that night, and that he would not have done that unless he knew them.
So they're looking at each other eye to eye. That kind of dispels gang retaliation shooting, where Kevin was misidentified for another gang member.
They were convinced Kevin Harris was the intended target. But why? Were there clues in his surging career? For one thing, in the hip-hop business, you can get rich overnight.
You have like really young artists, like 18, 19 years old, and they're millionaires. 2-3 years before that, they probably have $10 in their pocket.
Kevin hadn't made any big money yet, but he definitely was a prospect, a kid with big potential.
He was really hustling, trying to get artists and putting music together and getting his music heard. Kevin was all over the place.
He was putting himself out there. More people, more parties, and his tweets show it. Party in Baldwin Hills. Pool party at the Custom.
There's no other way to kind of attain your goals and aspirations without going at it 24/7. I could just see that in him. You're just showing up where you're supposed to show up and put yourself out there.
Putting himself out there, he was getting a little more flashy. He put extra wide chrome wheels on his Camaro. His dad didn't approve.
Now you're kind of blinging a little bit too much for maybe the average young man. You have to be less visible.
And Kevin was also getting louder on Twitter.
Kevin got real cocky. His name was like really getting out there. I did feel like, maybe he was kind of feeling himself, a little fluffing his little feathers.
I felt like blessing people with my presence, he tweeted. Word was that Kevin didn't want to work with people who weren't up to his level.
When you start getting hot, everybody wants a piece of you. You just can't work with everybody. And sometimes some people get offended by that. Things could happen out of those situations.
And Kevin wasn't shy about calling some people out. That's clear in his tweets. I'm getting bored by my so-called peers. And here he says someone was, quote, exceeding their talent. In the music business, words like that could be a problem.
There's no difference between that and dissing someone in the streets.
What is a diss?
A diss is disrespect. It's a very real thing, and again, it goes back to like these street rules.
So a lot of this conversation is through social media, Twitter specifically.
I'm sure that Kevin was aware of it. Did he think it would lead to him potentially losing his life? I don't think so.
Just who was Kevin dissing in those tweets? No one knows for sure. Could it have been that wannabe rapper who stood him up at the studio that night? Was there bad blood between them? The people who knew Kevin best sensed he was uneasy in the weeks before his death.
His demeanor did seem a little different. I couldn't really pinpoint like what it was, but I can tell when someone's vibe is off.
He'll come home. A couple times, I'd see him look back out the door. I'd say, "What's wrong, man? Somebody following you?" Nah, I'm okay.
The Harrises had prepared Kevin for life growing up in a tough neighborhood. There was sometimes gunfire in the area, but they believed they taught Kevin how to avoid it. Still, Kevin Sr. was taken aback by a question his son had.
At one point, he did ask me, "Well, what do you think about bulletproof windows?" I said, "Why?" I said, "Kevin, is somebody bothering you?" "No, it's all right. I'm okay." I said, "Just let me know. I've lived here long enough. We could speak on it. We can get it taken care of peacefully." "No, I'm all right, Dad." It was always, "I'm all right, Dad."
I love you, Kevin.
But something must have been wrong. After Kevin died, Catherine was surprised to learn that he was thinking of joining the military and getting out of town.
A week after he was murdered, I received a letter from the recruiter's office for him to go see the recruiter. You know, a lot of people say timing is everything, and gosh, I kind of wish it would have came a week earlier.
Kevin Harris never lived to see his recording played on the radio. That song by Jizzle.
I was at work, and then someone told me that it would be coming on, and then I hear it, and I kind of broke down right there. Everybody came running over, you know. I said, that's Kevin. That's my son."
11 years later, his father is putting his faith into the new investigation.
The clues are absolutely out there. We just need that one piece, that one smoking gun that we need to solidify this.
This is an active case, so the detectives won't name the names of anyone they have in their sights. But Skaggs did drop this clue about Kevin's last day.
He had made plans with one of the individuals who's definitely a suspect in this case to meet him at the studio at 8 o'clock. As far as I know, that individual was the only other person that knew that Kevin was going to be at the studio at 8 p.m.
We have now learned that that man was Desmond Carter, the wannabe rapper that Kevin was supposed to meet at the studio that night. He definitely caught the attention of the police. In fact, 48 Hours has learned that Desmond Carter was arrested for the murder of Kevin Harris in 2017. And here's the record. Carter was questioned, but never charged with anything. Authorities told us the evidence they had did not cross the threshold of reasonable doubt. Still, Desmond Carter remains a suspect. That's partly because there had been bad blood between Desmond and Kevin. Word on the street was that Kevin had dissed Desmond by refusing to give him beats. Whatever it was that brought Kevin to the studio that night, authorities suspect it was a trap.
I believe Kevin Harris was set up.
Kevin's own words may support that theory.
10 days or 2 weeks before his death, when he told one of his best friends that something's come up missing, I'm getting blamed for it. I didn't have anything to do with it, but I'm really scared of what might happen.
What had gone missing that Kevin was being blamed for? Was it money? Drugs? Police have told 48 Hours they do not believe that Kevin was dealing drugs.
Somebody blamed him for doing something that they did and blamed him to some big hitters that were gonna seek revenge. This is a classic story of a kid who trusted too much in several other people that he didn't really know that well, but he gave them all his trust, and he ended up being killed as a result.
We reached out to Desmond Carter. He didn't want to go on camera or comment directly, but through a friend, he said he had nothing to do with Kevin's death and that he thought of Kevin as one of his best friends.
I'm angry, yes, I'm angry. I'm angry with certain people that were hanging around my son because it has all the earmarks of someone that he knows well that was in the circle.
I grew up at the beach. I really love the ocean, and it's always been part of my life.
Detective Skaggs says walking on the nearby beach helps clear his head and reminds him to be patient.
It does not discourage me. If these cases were easy, they'd all be solved. I know that some of the people that I'm interviewing are not telling me the truth. So, it just makes it so hard.
Detectives are hoping for new information.
There's a ton of circumstantial evidence that kind of ends up adding up into one big significant theory that I think we're very close to proving. We think we're 85% there.
I am fully confident that this case is going to be solved. Yeah, so anybody who has any information about what happened to Kevin that day, whether they were an eyewitness, overheard something at a later date, or later got knowledge of what happened to Kevin and who hurt him, that person needs to come forward for so many reasons. First of all, for justice. Justice for Kevin and his family. It's the right thing to do and could be preventing these bad guys from hurting more people.
We really need help from the public and anybody who knows anything about this case and what happened to him and what happened that night to come forward. And that's what our plea is to the public.
As the case stands today, the murder of Kevin Harris remains unsolved.
You still miss him? Yeah. What do you miss most?
I just miss his spirit. I think it's just not knowing,
Not knowing.
I'm not supposed to cry. But just not knowing, like to see all that potential, just to see that the path that he was on, to know the support that he had from everyone around him. It's just really unfortunate to not be able to see that just, reach his full potential, So I just miss his spirit. I miss having him around. I miss the fact that we all missed the chance to see how he would grow,
Kevin's parents say they'll never give up.
I have nothing else to do with the grief that I feel every day, but to be motivated by it when I walk out the door each day. Let's kick some doors in. Let's stay relentless with this.
You can't hide from God. You can hide here on earth, duck and dodge, go to another state, go to another continent, whatever, but you can't hide from God.
The FBI helped fund billboards to help get new information. They've also contributed to a $50,000 reward. The Harrises say the reason they agreed to talk with 48 Hours is their hope this will finally bring justice for their son.
But when I go to sleep, when I dream, he's always there with me. For my son, I'm never going to stop grieving. Murdered. He was murdered.
These pictures are in my room, and to be honest with you, since we resemble each other so much, I turn them backwards. It's kind of hard to look at them all the time like that.
Kevin Harris Sr. doesn't need to look at those pictures anymore because the image of his son is fresh in his mind every single day, and he is consumed with solving this case for one reason.
So I can lay my son's soul to rest properly. His mother and I will make sure his passion and his dream lives on.
The FBI is asking for information from the public. The tip line phone number is 310-477-6565. Take an in-depth look into the investigation to find who killed Kevin Harris at 48hours.com.
I just saw my boyfriend in the night.
But police say she confessed to murder. One big problem. You can't hear it.
How do you mess up the confession?
What will a jury believe? 48 Hours, Saturday at 10/9 Central on CBS.
There 911, what's the address of emergency?
I called my wife on her phone. She's not breathing. She may have taken some pills.
Okay, what is your address?
When we get the alert tone, they say it's an overdose. They're saying that he's performing CPR.
Is somebody coming?
He's on his third, fourth, fifth cycle.
2, 3, 4, 5.
And that's when I get to the house. I'm Officer Gregorio de la Cruz. I was the first officer on the scene.
Hello? What's going on?
Male subject shows up at the door, and he just turns around and darts into the residence. I can see him heading up the stairs. I just see his shadow from the light that's on. So I followed him.
What's going on?
He's helping giving CPR. He's wearing scrubs. So I believe he's a higher level of care than I can provide. And I asked him, do you want me to help? Do I help you? And he right away relinquishes giving CPR.
What did she take? I think clonazepam. She's been pretty depressed lately.
I don't see any drugs. Usually when somebody overdoses on drugs, the pills are nearby, the needle's nearby, the syringe, something's nearby, and nothing was.
I'm probably at the scene within the next 30 to 45 minutes. I'm Sergeant Luis Mata Jr. I was the lead detective in the case. Then I start trying to get information from him, and I notice him not answering fully. And when I asked him, well, what's going on, Joel? He goes, well, I live a very private life, and those questions are something that I don't want coming out.
Maria had been seeking help through the church, through a pastor.
Wasn't she also being treated for severe depression and anxiety?
She had been getting some medical attention as well. But this case was unique because she was also expressing her thoughts, her feelings, her emotions in a diary.
My fears are losing my family, losing my husband, damaging my kids, making the wrong choice.
As the DA, my job was putting the right team together to work this case.
She described that she was going through a tough time, but that she loved those kids and she couldn't wait to do more in the future.
I want to be a good mom, a mom that is present, engaged, and involved with my kids.
How important, how crucial were those journals?
Very.
She wasn't a drug abuser. She loved those kids. She would never leave them behind. There's no way.
In the early morning hours of September 22nd, 2020, when Laredo police officer Gregoria de la Cruz walked inside the home on Canyon Oak Drive, his body camera was recording the emergency unfolding in front of him.
What's going on?
At the top of the stairs near the main bedroom, Joel Peyote, dressed in teal surgical scrubs, was performing CPR on his wife, Maria Munoz. De la Cruz soon took over. We sometimes zoom into the body cam footage to avoid graphic material. What kind of shape was she in when you started giving her CPR?
She was warm. She was still warm to the touch.
While De La Cruz desperately tried to revive Maria, he asked her husband about the drugs. Joel had told the 911 operator his wife may have taken some pills.
He stands up, he goes to the restroom, he opens a medicine cabinet. I can tell all this because I hear it.
I'm not really sure.
Upon his return, he hands De La Cruz a pill container. Clonazepam is a drug that is often used to treat anxiety. It had been prescribed to Joel, not to his wife Maria. De La Cruz quickly tossed the pill container aside to continue CPR. Joel told De La Cruz that Maria had been struggling lately.
She's been super depressed.
Joel told the officer that the couple's 2 young sons were still in separate bedrooms nearby.
You asleep? Yeah.
Seemingly unaware of what was happening to their mother Maria.
She would like to take her children to the park. She read to them before they went to bed. Just a really dedicated mother.
Yasmin Martinez says her friend Maria adored her boys, 5-year-old Alejandro and Valentino, who was turning 2.
I am happy. I am happy.
Maria enjoyed being a stay-at-home mom.
Take 1,000.
She was learning to play the piano and planning to resume her career.
I asked her if she had gone to school, and she said yes, that she was a nurse in Puerto Rico. And she's like, I'm actually studying to take my test so I could work here.
It was in Puerto Rico where Maria met Joel Peyote. He was 11 years older and a nursing student. A few years after they married, the couple moved to Laredo, Texas. Joel had landed a lucrative job as a nurse anesthetist, known in the medical profession as a CRNA.
A nurse anesthetist, or a CRNA, certified registered nurse anesthetist, and a physician anesthesiologist use the same medications, same techniques to provide anesthesia for people of all ages.
Tina Dorez, also a CRNA, worked with Joel Peyote at Doctors Hospital in Laredo. Did he seem dedicated to his work?
Yes, very much so. He always wanted to be better. When I first met him, he was very family-oriented, a hard worker, smart guy. He would always talk about Maria and Alejandro and showing pictures of his son and just talking about family life in general.
And now at the Peyote home, paramedics and police were struggling to save the life of the young wife and mother. When more help arrived, De La Cruz sent Joel Peyote downstairs to the kitchen. And that's when De La Cruz realized that the pill container he had tossed to the side earlier,
Hey, there were some drugs here.
was now missing.
He had a prescription drug. Where is it? I was like, he has to have them. So that's when I asked, hey, does he have pills? He comes up to the first landing of the stairs and he tosses them to me. All right. So he had taken them. Now I'm thinking, now you're trying to hide something.
At 3:58, less than 3 hours after Joel Peyote called 911, his wife, 31-year-old Maria Munoz, was declared dead inside their home.
What's going on? What happened?
Police began asking Joel what had happened to his wife.
We had sex, we had took a shower. Then I felt she was like knocked out. And then I go back upstairs and then she just...
By now, things just didn't feel right to the investigators. And there was something about Joel's appearance that seemed suspicious.
He was really sweaty. I'm wearing a vest, I'm wearing a gun, I'm wearing almost 20 pounds of gear, right? And I'm not sweating as bad as he is.
So what went through your mind when you saw how sweaty he was?
He's using drugs. He may be under the influence of drugs.
You want to see a fire truck? Come on, let's go outside.
The couple's children, now in the care of law enforcement,
What's your name?
were escorted outside.
My name is Alejandro.
Alejandro?
Authorities immediately launched a death investigation.
When I get there, I meet with Officer De La Cruz. He runs the information by me.
Lead investigator Sergeant Luis Mata didn't know if Maria had died by suicide, an accidental overdose, or if her husband was somehow involved. Mata knew he needed to search the house, but to do it, he would have to get Joel Peyote's permission.
And he said, well, I don't want you going through my stuff because I'm a very private man. Then I said, look, Joel, I'm not gonna force you to, this is your right. But I'm gonna have to go and get with my DA and apply for a search warrant.
Yeah, just leave those.
Joel eventually gave consent for the search. Still, Mata had a lot of questions. To get some answers, he directed authorities to put Joel in a police cruiser to take him to the station. Could you see him before you went in?
I could see him through my camera. Everything's there is recorded. He's hitting walls. He's moving furniture. It was scaring some of the people down the hall in the dispatch room. So that's how loud it was.
Around 4 a.m., Mata begins his interview with Joel Peyote, who claims he had given Maria that container of clonazepam prescribed to him.
Is it possible that she swallowed them all? How many pills were there before? He couldn't remember the minorest things. I don't know how many times I asked him, play back to me the minute you got there. What did you do? And he, well, what did I do? What did I do? What did I do? Well, you know what? If you remember the truth, you don't have to think about it.
What was the time period between the time you got out of the shower to when you noticed, hey, she's not really responding anymore? 10 minutes? Not 100% sure.
The sudden death of a healthy 31-year-old woman like Maria Munoz didn't make sense to Sergeant Luis Mata, and neither did her husband, Joel Peyote's explanation.
His initial statement was that he went in and took a shower. He thought she was asleep, and then 10 minutes later, he realizes that she's unresponsive.
What's going on? Unresponsive on the bed.
When a common person showers, what's gonna be in the bathroom? Steam, condensation, the smell of soap or shampoo. That master bedroom shower, which is the one that he alleged he used, was as dry as a desert.
Investigators had also discovered a syringe wrapper on the floor.
Hey, there's a needle right here.
And a needle catheter on the stairs. Syringes and IV equipment in a medical bag were found inside the home.
Why would there be syringes in the house? So, I don't know.
Then Joel makes a hand gesture and taps his bicep.
Steroids? Yeah, that's me. Okay.
With Joel Peyote at the police station, Maria's close friend, Angela Montoya, and her husband, Luis Ayala, rushed over to the house to take care of the kids. Luis, a co-worker of Joel, says he had begun to see changes in Joel's physique and personality 2 years before Maria's death.
He lost a lot of weight and then started gaining muscles.
Did you suspect that maybe he was taking steroids?
Maybe,
or
but maybe. He was changing, like, more friendly with girls.
flirting more?
Yeah.
The family man who had once bragged to friends and colleagues about his wife and kids began changing his social media posts too.
He deleted the pictures of Maria, or he just started posting everything by himself, not with his kids.
Howell, in demand as a nurse anesthetist, was making a lot of money. And according to Angela, he enjoyed showing off his wealth.
He has this new sporty car. I bought Maria that one, and I bought myself this one, bragging about it.
But friends say the changes they saw in Howell went much deeper. In 2018, around the same time Maria gave birth to the couple's second son, Howell began pursuing a woman named Janet Arredondo, a surgical nurse he met at work.
Joel took Janet to like a vacation spree in Europe. I don't recall which countries were that he took.
Well, there
was
one trip, there was Spain, and then the next trip was France and Greece, actually.
There you go. There you go. So Maria found out about that while he was there with Janet.
According to Angela, Maria confirmed her suspicion about her husband's infidelity when she found a plane ticket for one of his European trips. When her disappointment turned into deep depression, she was prescribed medication. But perhaps the best medicine for Maria turned out to be her daily journals, discovered in her home by investigators. I don't want to be sad anymore. I don't want my heart to hurt. I don't want my mind to be in torture. Yet at times, she seemed hopeful, believing her faith could mend the couple's 10-year marriage. Lord, this is a lot for me. All I really want to do is see change in him. And it seemed to be working. Just months after her husband had taken his mistress on those European vacations, Howell treated Maria to a lavish getaway in Las Vegas.
And she showed me a couple of Louis Vuitton he purchased for her.
But what seemed like a second chance for her marriage didn't last. Howell could never quite leave Janet.
How long have you been with Jeanette? About 2 years. Out of those 2 years, how long has Maria known about it?
She said for a while, for a long while.
In fact, Howell told Sergeant Mata that he no longer lived with his family and that he had moved in with Janet Arredondo 5 months before Maria's death. Mata wondered how much the other woman knew and asked her to come to the police station to talk.
What is your relationship with him? I wouldn't have called you at 6:30 in the morning if it was just for being nosy. It's not that I'm trying to be nosy, but I'll get to where I'm going.
He's my boyfriend.
Mata continued pressing Janet about Howell and then told her about Maria.
The reason that I'm here is because last night, Howell's wife passed away. There doesn't appear to be right now any type of foul play. We're still pending an autopsy. So let's get with, how did you and Howell even start dating?
I'm sorry.
I understand. Take your time. I know it's all kind of thrown at you, so, you know, I told you at the very beginning I'm going to be honest with you, so I am. Our main thing now is, obviously, is what happened.
I'm sorry, what was your question?
How long have you and Howell been dating?
Almost 2 years now.
Okay. Did Maria, his wife, did she do drugs?
Not that I'm aware of. He just told me that she was very depressed.
Okay.
When Sergeant Mata mentioned Maria may have overdosed, Janet seemed surprised.
Are you saying she overdosed?
We don't know yet. The main thing is this, Janet, is when we tell her family, they're going to think that either Joel killed her or that you had something to do with it. That's why we have to rule you out, okay? Has Joel ever confided in you that he wanted to do something to his wife?
No.
Howell had told police that Maria may have overdosed on the drug clonazepam.
He thinks she took these.
But when the autopsy was conducted, 8 hours after Maria was declared dead, the medical examiner found no pill residue in her stomach. And there was something on Maria's body at the scene that puzzled both the medical examiner and investigators. A tiny mark on Maria's right arm.
It was a little prick, kind of like whenever the common person draws blood or has their blood checked when they go to the doctor. One little dot.
That's it.
On her right elbow crease.
No other signs of drug use or anything like that. The autopsy report states that Maria died from a mixed drug intoxication. While the medical examiner couldn't say how the drugs got into her system, she did rule out suicide after talking to Maria's friends and reading her journal. On the day before she died, Maria wrote, "What is it that I want? Move forward." So could Maria's death have been an accidental overdose, or was it murder? When Dr. John Hunsinger, an anesthesiologist and Howell's former boss, heard the autopsy results, he immediately became suspicious.
And I called Detective Mata, and I told him my concerns.
He urged Sergeant Mata to order a detailed toxicology screening to determine which drugs had killed Maria and how they got there.
Did you inject her tonight?
No.
With anything?
No.
Authorities would have to wait nearly 4 months to get the answers they needed. On a Sunday afternoon at the First Baptist Church in Laredo,
the victorious life is also a life of service. All of our lives were impacted by the precious life of Maria.
a large crowd of family and friends came to mourn Maria Munoz, including her estranged husband, Joel.
Her funeral was really sad. Joel was there and he was crying. He seemed very upset, very sad, but
To Maria's friend, Yasmin Martinez, he seemed a little too upset, too sad.
what made me feel angry was him near the casket, crying over her, giving her kisses. Like, why now? You have made her suffer and cry so much, and you're doing this now?
Joel Peyote's display of grief
Hey, you got a defibrillator?
did nothing to deter the investigation into his wife's death. Sergeant Luis Mata and Officer Gregoria de la Cruz say that footage captured by the body cam on the morning Maria died shows something curious. Remember the pills in a container that Joel said his wife had taken? De la Cruz tossed it aside when he was giving Maria CPR.
He had a prescription drug. Where is it?
At some point, it disappeared.
Yeah, I see it still here right now.
Exactly.
And here's how it happened, they say. Joel grabs the pill container and puts it in his pocket.
Reach it and put it in.
He just reached over and put it right back in his shirt. If that's really what she took, why would you want to hide that?
They were also suspicious of that needle catheter,
Hey, there's a needle right here. So
the kind used for IVs, discovered at the scene. Remember, Maria had a tiny mark on her right arm. Sergeant Mata shared his concerns with the Webb County District Attorney's Office.
We have a 24/7 phone, and law enforcement can contact us with any questions.
Chief Assistant DA Maricela Jacoman and District Attorney Isidro Alaniz knew the case would be tough to prove since even the medical examiner wasn't sure exactly how Maria died. The medical examiner is saying, I can't say for a fact this is homicide.
I remember having this conversation with the medical examiner early on, and I remember her saying, look, I wasn't there, and neither were you. All we know is that she has this combination of dangerous drugs in her bloodstream. We don't know who gave them to her, if she had some in her system already, if she took some later on.
Either accident or murder.
Accident or murder.
Investigators began to question Maria's friends and discovered that the Saturday before Maria died, there was a confrontation at Janet's house when Maria saw Joel's car there.
So that's when she stepped out of the car and then she rang the doorbell.
According to Angela, Maria, seen on Janet's doorbell camera, gave Joel an ultimatum.
Do you choose her or do you choose me? And then he says, I choose Janet.
Janet called the police, and when a responding officer arrived at her home, he called Maria, who had by then left with Joel. When Maria answered her cell phone, the officer's body cam recorded the sound of Joel berating her in the background.
Hey, I'm talking to you right now. Hang up the phone.
I guess that's your boyfriend.
Yeah. According to Angela, Maria told her that Joel became violent.
And he got so frustrated with everything that he punched the windshield.
He broke it, didn't
He broke it. Yes, he broke it.
On Sunday morning, Maria texted her husband about hiring a divorce lawyer, and he replied, "We can do this with minimal lawyer intervention. It's too much money." Joel then seems to have had a change of heart and sends Maria this email. "I'm so sad. I'm hurting inside. I want to sit down with you to talk without arguing. A heart-to-heart." They agreed to meet Monday night. Before Joel arrived, Maria messaged her friend Yasmin Martinez to pray for her. "I just ask if you can pray for me. Tonight, we're going to talk."
And then I answered her. And I told her that I would pray for her.
Maria's request for prayers that night would be her final message to Yasmin. She died early Tuesday morning. Nearly 4 months after Maria's death, Sergeant Mata and Officer De La Cruz finally get the toxicology test results they had been waiting for.
0 clonazepam.
0 clonazepam, the drug Joel claimed Maria had taken. Instead, the toxicology report revealed 7 other drugs in Maria's system.
So positive for morphine, Demerol, Versed, Propofol, ketamine, lidocaine, Narcan.
Most of these medications are typically used during surgery, and one of them can only be administered with an IV.
What was your reaction?
He killed her. This guy killed his wife.
Authorities got a warrant. Officer De La Cruz, who had tried to save Maria's life, returned to Joel's home
He knew why we were there.
to make the arrest.
By the time we knock on the door and we announce our presence,
You have the right to remain silent.
just like the way you do the movies, comes out, I'm here, I'm here. He puts his hands behind his back, lets us cuff him, doesn't put up a fight.
Joel Peyote was taken to the police station and booked.
You can call my attorney.
Oh, you could call him.
Prosecutors believe he was the one who gave his wife the deadly mixture. But can they prove he wanted her to die?
What do you think was the most suspicious aspect of Maria's death? See more evidence from the case at 48hours.com.
When Joel Peyote's former boss, anesthesiologist Dr. John Hunsinger, saw the list of drugs found in Maria Munoz, 7 different medications, he was surprised by one drug in particular.
I was very shocked to see propofol.
Where would he get that propofol? You can't just go to the drugstore to get propofol.
You have to get it from a hospital.
While most of the drugs found in Maria's system could be consumed by mouth, propofol is usually injected by someone else with an IV.
One of the things about propofol, it relaxes you greatly, but it doesn't last very long. It makes you stop breathing if you have too much.
I think most of us, when we hear about propofol, we think of Michael Jackson.
Correct.
Singer Michael Jackson's death in June 2009 was blamed in part on an accidental overdose of propofol. And after Maria Munoz's death, a highly elevated level of the drug was found in her system.
Hers was the highest level I've seen.
And what does that say to you?
I believe this was death by propofol.
With Joel Peyote now under arrest, authorities were convinced that Peyote's girlfriend, Janet Arredondo, knew more than what she shared in that first interview. So they got a search warrant for her home. Then they offered her a deal. In exchange for more information, Janet would get immunity from prosecution. Janet agreed to a second police interview, and accompanied by attorneys, she now seemed ready to talk.
Did Joel ever bring home any medical drugs?
Yes.
Janet told police that Peyote had often brought drugs to her home, some for his own recreational use, including ketamine, morphine, lidocaine, fentanyl, and more.
Versed. Okay.
Propofol?
Janet's information about propofol kicked the case into high gear. District Attorney Isidro Alaniz selected a team of attorneys led by Maricela Jackman.
I am Karina Rios.
My name is Ana Karen Garza.
My name is Cristal Calderon.
We are Maria's team.
All four prosecutors were convinced that Maria's husband had methodically planned her murder and that the devoted mother and wife had suffered in the months before her death.
I've heard of emotional abuse. I've seen it. I've worked around it, but I never realized how prevalent it is, even in our lives, where you can relate to some of the things that Maria was experiencing.
On the face of it, this is a couple having problems. He's having an affair. But to you, this is domestic violence. How?
Well, I think it goes so much further than just being a spouse. You could see the power struggle that existed or the lack thereof.
Assistant District Attorney Karina Rios.
Maria had no power in this relationship.
And the evidence of that, prosecutors say, is found in Maria's own journals. Prosecutor Jackman read one of those entries.
Life is so unfair. My husband, the man I love so much, is causing me so much pain.
I want to know, what is it that you want me to do?
Maria also left evidence on her cell phone that she secretly recorded approximately 4 months before her death.
And what are the expectations you have on this marriage?
And she gave us this very powerful video.
You walk out that door, we're getting a divorce.
All right, fine. You got it.
She was having a discussion with him, and that was so painful to watch.
But prosecutors would need much more than that video and Maria's journal entries. How do they believe that Joel Peyote dosed his wife with all those drugs?
That was the million-dollar question. We kept saying, how did he get her to submit to this?
During Janet Arredondo's second police interview, she said Peyote had told her about the night Maria died. He had gone there, he said, to have that heart-to-heart talk, and then injected her, not to kill her, Peyote said, but to calm her down.
Why did he tell you that he injected her? Because she was erratic?
Right. He wanted to just calm her down. So he did it with medication.
But investigators believe the sedatives were part of Peyote's plan to kill Maria, that before Peyote put an IV needle in Maria's arm, he could have slipped several sedative drugs into her favorite drink, coffee.
Ketamine, Versed, morphine, and Demerol. Those four could have been put in her coffee. She then passes out.
After that, they say, Peyote injected Maria with a deadly dose of propofol. Then, Chief Assistant District Attorney Ana Karen Garza Gutierrez says that Peyote deliberately waited to call for help.
I believe he waited until she was dead to call 911 to make sure that no one can bring her back.
Did you play any role in Maria's death at all? You?
Janet said Peyote did admit to her that he got rid of some of the medical equipment he used to inject Maria before first responders arrived.
He just told me he got rid of them.
Peyote was out on bail, so prosecutors had him rearrested, and along with murder, he was charged with tampering with evidence. Again, he made bail and would wear an ankle monitor. In March 2023, 2.5 years after Maria Munoz's death, her husband went on trial for her murder. 48 Hours made several interview requests to Joel Peyote's defense team, but never received a response. Joel Peyote declined our request for an interview.
The evidence will show that Joel Peyote, the motive, he had the intent, and he had the means to kill Maria.
Prosecutors presented 15 witnesses to prove to a jury that Peyote had carefully and intentionally selected the drugs to kill Maria. Their star witness, Janet Arredondo, who told the jury what she had shared with police.
Did Mr. Peyote indicate to you that he dumped or discarded the IV catheter and the vials? Yes.
When the defense case begins, Joel Peyote's lawyers admit their client injected his wife, but they say he wasn't trying to kill her. He was trying to save her. Joel Peyote, wearing a blue suit and a dark gray tie, listened carefully as his defense team presented his case.
Now, Maria died, and there's no question that Joel was there.
Defense attorney Roberto Bali claims Maria was terribly depressed and had been drinking and abusing drugs for months.
When Joel arrived, Maria was already on something.
According to the defense, Joel Peyote didn't intend to kill his wife, and the proof his attorneys say is in that toxicology report. They admit Peyote gave his wife medication to calm her down, and then when he found her unconscious, they say he gave her Narcan, a drug used to reverse an opioid overdose.
Someone tried to bring her back to life, and it wasn't the paramedics, it wasn't the police, it was Joel. So he did not want her dead. This was a terrible accident.
A terrible accident, the defense argues, that was caused by a combination of whatever Maria had taken and the medication Peyote used to inject her. How do you know the Narcan wasn't there because he tried to save her? That he went too far, realized he had gone too far?
Narcan is not a reversal agent for propofol. And propofol was what stopped her heart at the end.
The defense never explained to the jury how the propofol got into Maria's system. But prosecutors say that the level of drugs discovered in Maria's body could not have been accidental.
It was enough medication to survive 2 major surgeries. It was so much.
And why do you think he gave her so much?
To be sure.
While Peyote himself didn't testify, his emotional mother did. Miriam Carrasquillo told prosecutors during cross-examination that Maria had talked about how sad she was about her marriage.
You were aware that Joel Peyote was seeing Janet, weren't you?
Yes, she told.
Who told you?
I did.
And did you encourage her to stay in the marriage?
I told her that everybody have a limit, and she have a limit. When she decided she don't want to be no more with him, I have my house open for her.
But prosecutors insist, as sad as Maria may have been about her marriage, there's no evidence that she abused either drugs or alcohol. They believe Peyote's motive was money and that he murdered Maria because he didn't want to pay for a divorce and split his assets. After 8 days of testimony, the jury got the case. It took them less than an hour to decide Joel Peyote's fate. Guilty of murdering his wife, Maria, and tampering with the evidence. Many members of the medical community attended the trial. Peyote's former colleague, Tina Dorez.
He's not dumb. I mean, he's a smart guy. So I don't know if he just got caught up with his God complex, that he thought he was smarter than everyone and that he was going to outsmart them.
Just hours after the guilty verdict, Peyote was sentenced to life in prison, cuffed and escorted out of the courtroom.
She loved him and she adored him.
Maria's friend, Angela Montoya.
She just loved him too much.
Prosecutors got justice for Maria, but it's a tragic ending for the family she loved and fought so hard to keep together.
I think sometimes the worst injuries don't even leave a mark. The injuries on your heart, on your mind. We could never see those on Maria, but she told us about them. She carried a lot of scars with her from this relationship.
Maria's team say the most important witness at trial ended up being Maria herself, and that her journals showed those scars were healing.
I want a life that's mine, different and unique. A life that's balanced with every emotion, but a happy, fulfilling life.
She was a wonderful soul.
And she was a great mother. She was just an amazing person. And that energy, we felt it.
She disappeared off the face of the earth.
I started believing she was murdered.
The dogs went into the backyard. We found a little girl's shoe. No trace of her for 22 years. And then I got a phone call. Hey, Captain, he says, you sitting down?
48 Hours, Saturday at 10/9 Central on CBS.
I'll never forget that day. Something sinister happened. Something unimaginable.
My cell phone rings, and it's Clark County Sheriff Joe Lombardo. Sheriff says to me, Glenn, I'm calling about Jeff Gehrman. And he says, Jeff's dead.
Just like that?
Just like that.
Jeff Gehrman was found dead with stab wounds outside his home around 10:30 yesterday morning.
Metro Police are asking for the public's help. They're saying this is the suspect.
I couldn't even believe it. I had so many questions. Who would do this? I mean, how did this happen?
Just how big a list of people might have wanted Jeff dead?
That's a line of people that runs from here to Los Angeles. This guy's written about terrible people who've done awful things for over 40 years. The worst kinds of people.
They called him Tony the Ant, but Tony Spilotro was a big figure in the mafia.
He had a special interest in covering organized crime.
Watch yourself.
You know, he was gutsy and fearless.
Jeff Gehrman was guided by an innate sense of right and wrong. If he knew someone was engaging in criminal activity, unethical activity, inappropriate behavior, he wanted to do that story. He wanted to bring it to light.
We couldn't believe he would even take a call from us, but he did.
Give me a sense of what state you were in when you called Jeff Gehrman.
We were desperate.
In fear every day?
It was just survival. One step in front of the other, one day at a time.
The only person that listened to us and the only person that tried to do something, that concretely put their name on the line to try to do something.
That listened to us.
Was Jeff Gehrman?
Was Jeff. He did something and he fought for us. And he is 100% our hero. And if I was to talk to him today, I think the first thing I would say is I'm sorry.
As Jeff's editor, his colleague, did you ever sense any danger in covering this story?
There was absolutely no suggestion. no hint that this would end the way it did. None.
On September 2nd, 2022, it was a boiling hot late summer day in Las Vegas, and people were getting ready for the Labor Day weekend. It was late morning when, in broad daylight, something terrible happened.
As investigative journalist for the Las Vegas Review-Journal, Brianna Erickson and Rhonda Prast had seen a lot of bad people do a lot of bad things. But nothing came close to the Machiavellian plot to murder their friend and colleague, Jeff German.
Jeff German was at his house on vacation. He'd gone out to get something to eat. He came back, shut his garage door. You could see in the surveillance video from across the street that someone, an assailant, came into his yard, went to the left side of his house, went inside the gate, shut the gate.
And then we see Jeff moments later opening his garage door, and he was instantly ambushed when he turned the corner to where that person was lying in wait. In the video, you can kind of see a struggle, but Jeff ultimately falls to the ground and he never gets up.
What happened to him in that attack?
Jeff was stabbed. He was stabbed 7 times, 4 times in the neck, 3 in the torso.
7 stab wounds. Did that suggest what kind of a killing this was?
To me, this was a very personal attack. To stab someone in such a short time, viciously, 7 times, with no warning.
A concerned neighbor found Jeff German's body hidden behind some bushes 24 hours later.
911 emergency for BL 10965. Do you need police, fire, medical?
I have a neighbor across the street from me, and he's laying in the side yard. I believe he's dead. He's got blood over him.
It was just a terrible thing to know that he was lying there, and we wondered whether he could have been saved, but medical experts told us later that he likely died within a minute or 2.
It was a small mercy for a man who had spent his life fighting for the underdog.
At the base, he just wanted to help people and protect people, you know, and expose wrongdoing.
From the start, Jeff German was shooting for big game. And when he came from Wisconsin in the 70s, Vegas was the Serengeti. Mark Fierro, a TV reporter at the time, became a lifelong friend and trusted source.
Jeff German at the outset was a reporter who caught the most important beat in Las Vegas of his day, that was organized crime.
Then a reporter for the Las Vegas Sun, Jeff took on one of the biggest, meanest mobsters on the Strip.
A prime target of the feds is Tony Spilotro, the outfit's representative in Vegas.
Tony Spilotro, a power player for the Chicago mob, played by Joe Pesci in Scorsese's film Casino.
You said I'm bringing heat on you?
Here's Jeff German talking about Spilotro in the podcast Mobbed Up.
He had a reputation for being a brutal killer, yet he was never convicted of a single murder.
A podcast Jeff made about a year before he died.
He had the coldest eyes I've ever seen. In my stories, I got used to calling Spilotro by his street name, Tony the Ant. He hated that, and it sometimes left me at the receiving end of Spilotro's nasty stares and his menacing fits of anger.
The irony of all of this is that Jeff was not a tall man, was not a strong man, but he toughed it out, and he went toe-to-toe with these guys year in and year out, and some of these guys were dangerous guys.
Try as they did, they couldn't scare him, says Brianna.
After his tires had been slashed and some spooky things were happening to him, he told a mob affiliate in a bar to call off his dogs. Then he got punched in the face. He later described that as a badge of honor.
A couple of hours later, with 4 stitches under my lip, I had a war story to tell.
As the mob slowly lost its grip on Vegas, Jeff built a career exposing dirty business, government corruption, and crime. Rhonda, the former assistant managing editor for investigations at the RJ, worked with him for 3 years.
He kept digging and digging and digging, and he was like the dog, the little dog that would take a bite of your pants and wouldn't let go. You know, he was just so laser focused on continuing to go deeper and deeper and deeper into a story.
That tenacity helped him expose the truth in stories that could have remained in the shadows. He was one of the few journalists, along with his colleague David Ferrara, to report on the Susan Winters case, a woman whose parents doubted the suicide ruling in their daughter's death.
And Jeff started putting pieces together, working with the attorney for the family, and that the way that she killed herself was so unseemly that it just didn't add up. And once he started, and he started pulling on that thread, and then he started pulling on a rope, and then it turned into a chain.
That chain turned into a series of stories that targeted the husband. Turns out Susan died from ingesting a lethal combination of painkillers and antifreeze. The husband, who was charged with murder, ultimately pleaded guilty to voluntary manslaughter and was sent to prison. As hard-charging and public as Jeff was in his work life, the lifelong bachelor was notoriously private about his personal life.
He was always back to business, back to business. This man was born to be a reporter.
A man who lived for his job, and as it turns out, a man who may have died for it. The entire newsroom rallied together. His colleagues had no idea who did this or why. But they were determined to do what Jeff German would have done. Find out. The RJ staff was in mourning. Their sorrow in full display on Jeff German's desk.
It's a reminder that this team is not going to be the same without him, but we can carry on the way he would want us to.
And that meant doing what he would have done. The staff started tugging on threads and searching for clues, working non-stop on one of the most important stories of their careers. Who killed Jeff German?
Immediately, I started thinking in my head, all right, who had threatened Jeff in any way in the last 5 months? Who could have possibly done this?
Executive editor Glenn Cook asked Rhonda to come up with a short list of people to consider.
One of the names I gave him was Robert Tellis.
And who is Robert Tellis?
He was a Clark County elected official in charge of the Public Administrator's Office, which handles estates of people who were deceased.
One of the estate coordinators in Tellis's office, Alicia Goodwin, had reached out to Jeff German in March of 2022. She had filed a formal complaint with the Clark County Office of Diversity on behalf of herself and some colleagues, claiming Robert Tellis harassed, bullied, and discriminated against them.
He was a horrible human being. Monster is the right word.
But Alicia says the county did nothing.
It was always, he's an elected official, there's nothing we can do.
Jeff agreed to hear what Alicia and her colleagues,
Actually, at one
Noreen
point, someone was
Pagdanganan,
told,
Rita Reed, and Jessica Coleman, had to say.
And when he finally talked to us and he let us tell what had happened to us, and he said, no, I'm going to look into this, I think that's the only thing that gave us enough energy to keep going.
According to the women, the trouble began almost immediately after Robert Tellis took office in January 2019. Rita, a supervisor, was his second in command and a 12-year veteran of the office.
He came in very abruptly into the office and he slammed his palms down on my desk with a real loud bang.
Like a...
Oh, yes, absolutely. And he leaned forward and he said, we're ripping off the bandage. You no longer supervise anyone. No one reports to you. They all report to me. And he turned around and he walked out. And I just sat there stunned.
The women say they were ordered not to speak to each other in the office.
It felt dangerous to even have a hello, good morning conversation with coworkers in passing.
If caught, the consequences could be severe, says Alicia. She remembers getting called into Tellis's office after he saw her and two other women talking.
We walked into his office and he said, sit down and shut up. You're not gonna talk, I'm gonna talk. And he just got this look on his face. He sat back and he pointed at Noreen and said, F you.
What was it like to be in that room and receiving that?
It was scary because I did not want to upset him because I knew how he could be.
Despite years of service, all the women say they feared for their jobs. And Jessica, who safeguarded the property of the deceased in a caged room, says she feared for her physical safety. She says Tellis would sometimes come in and threaten her.
There was an instance where he got in my face and, you know, he's yelling and I'm sort of backed up against the cage door.
He was trying to physically intimidate you.
Yes, yes, he would bring his chairs up really close and demand that you really pay attention and look him in the eye while he told you horrible things.
One of those horrible things, says Jessica, almost did her in. Alone in the cage together, she says, Tellis started by saying that he noticed she never talked to anyone in the office, a bizarre comment considering his no talking rule.
And he goes, if you keep going down this road, you're going to be like our cases and you're just going to die alone and nobody's going to find you. And I sat there and cried. And then after that, it's hard to admit, then I started thinking the best thing I could do would be to sacrifice myself for the girls. And I had actually picked out a place that I was going to hang myself in the vault in view of the door because he would always come by and make sure I was working. And I thought, this will be good. If they have to find me this way, then the county will have to do something.
Mercifully, Jessica realized that was not the solution to the problem. But they came up with another plan. The women believed Tellis was having an inappropriate relationship with a subordinate in the office named Roberta. Roberta, they claimed, used that relationship to assume power and privilege beyond her job title.
Is there any doubt in your mind that the two of them were having a romantic affair?
No.
Absolutely not.
None whatsoever.
No.
But they needed proof. So they decided to follow them.
We had seen a pattern, short dress day. If they went the same direction, we knew that we needed to go.
It was always to the same place, says Alicia, a parking garage in a nearby mall. The alleged lovers would park next to each other.
We started to take pictures and we started to video.
That's Roberta's car on the left, Robert Tellis's on the right.
So how did you position yourselves where you could get some video?
Very carefully.
Very, yeah.
In a car?
sometimes in a car, sometimes we would get out of our car. There were kind of some cutouts and pillars where you could get angles here and there, and we just tried to move around and to get the best that we could.
According to the women, the alleged lovers would ultimately end up in the back seat of Roberta's car.
Roberta has said that they would sit in the back seat because she wanted to be able to make eye contact with him as they were having important office discussions.
Yeah. Yes. That is what she said.
And
Okay, and your reaction to that?
Well, that last video we got, we had a little better recorder. You can see the shadows, and you can see those heads going together.
we felt it was so inappropriate.
But this was the shot they believed was the most telling. Roberta leaving the car and smoothing down her dress.
It was so unbelievable, and it just took a moment to digest that at that moment, it was like so real.
After seeing the videos, Jeff asked Roberta about them. She responded, "I have not had an inappropriate relationship with him." The RJ published the story.
Let me read the lead in this first article. The Clark County Public Administrator's Office has been mired in turmoil and internal dissension over the past 2 years, with allegations of emotional stress, bullying, and favoritism leading to secret videotaping of the boss and a co-worker outside the office. That story went all over the state of Nevada and, before long, all over the country. As this settled in, are you thinking mission accomplished, or are you thinking what's going to happen to us next?
Both. Yeah, the terror didn't stop. The terror almost just got worse. It just changed face.
What do you make of Robert Tellez's alleged behavior in the workplace? Chat now with the 48 Hours team on Facebook and X.
Jeff German's story, with its allegations of turmoil, bullying, and hostility, had a swift and searing effect at the public administrator's office. The county finally sent in an outside consultant, and Robert Tellez lost his bid for re-election in the primary, ironically to his arch-enemy, Rita Reed. But Jeff wasn't through with Robert Tellez yet. He wrote 3 more scathing pieces chronicling the fall of the once up-and-coming young Democrat, and another story was in the works. But Jeff German did not survive to write it.
Jeff German was found stabbed to death outside his home in the Northwest.
When news of Jeff's murder broke, the women Jeff had fought for were overcome with grief, but also dread, afraid of what they may have unleashed. Alicia's dad, a former Las Vegas police detective who introduced her to Jeff, said what they were all thinking.
My dad called me first thing in the morning and said that Jeff had been killed. And I didn't even get to react before my dad's next word were, "I know who my first suspect is." As soon as those words came out of his mouth, I knew immediately too.
That it was Robert.
That it was Robert.
The staff at the Las Vegas Review-Journal was wondering the same thing. Could Robert Tellez have been involved?
The journalistic hounds are released, right?
Yes. We weren't going to do anything until every little rock was overturned and every little fact was found out about what this guy was and who he was.
Art Kane, now the investigation's editor, was a reporter at the time.
And we started finding out a lot of interesting things about him. For example, he was arrested while he was public administrator for choking his wife.
Can you please send somebody here? My husband is going crazy.
There's body cam video that we have obtained of that.
Who did I hit? Cameras.
Our cameras are on.
But you guys just want to take me down because I'm a public official.
Tellez, slurring his words, was arrested for domestic battery and resisting arrest.
There is sufficient evidence to book me right now.
There is sufficient evidence to book you right now, yes.
And I'm not trying to be like, I'm a public official, so, do what I want you to do. Right. I'm saying, I'm not a Idiot.
He received a suspended 90-day sentence on the resisting charge and was ordered to attend a corrective thinking class. The battery charge was dismissed.
No one ever heard about it because no one covers DUIs and domestics, and that flew under the radar.
Looking back, there were other warning signs, says Brianna, such as these. A series of tweets Tellis posted in response to Jeff's reporting.
Read that one for me.
Looking forward to lying smear piece number 4 by @JGarrimanRJ. Hashtag one trick pony. I think he's mad that I haven't crawled into a hole and died. Laughing emoji.
What did you think of that one?
Somebody who's pretty pissed off.
But the journalists knew angry tweets didn't prove anything. They needed facts, and facts were hard to come by. All they had were these 2 still surveillance photographs the police had released of the suspect in Jeff's neighborhood. The outfit, bizarre as it seems, may have been a strategic choice, says Art.
The outfit is very typical of what construction workers and people who do landscaping wear because they want to cover up all their skin from the sun.
When the police released a surveillance video, Review Journal photographer Kevin Cannon immediately noticed something the big hat and orange reflective shirt couldn't hide. The man's walk, his gait.
How would you describe that gait?
It's a bit of a limp and a favor on one side, it seems.
Kevin went digging in his files and found this, a walking shot he had taken of Robert Tellis when Jeff interviewed him at his office. The staff compared both videos side by side.
I'm not sure how to describe it, but it was definitely the identical gait in my mind.
Kevin then went through hundreds of still photos he had taken that day and found this.
It's a very chilling photo, and it's the one and only photo where Jeff and Tellis are in the same photo.
Executive editor Glenn Cook says his staff moved forward on the operating theory that Robert Tellis could have been the killer, but they still didn't have hard evidence. Then the police released this, a photo of the suspect's car, a maroon Yukon Denali.
Show me what you did.
But you just type in the address, you pull up the Google Street View.
Assistant city editor David Ferrara immediately typed Tellis's home address into Google Earth.
And if you zoom in on the house, that maroon vehicle is there, parked in the driveway.
The maroon SUV was registered to Tellis's wife.
And at that moment, we send reporters and photographers straight to the house. And the message I give our Metro editor is, do not engage, do not approach, do not be seen. This man is very likely a suspect in the murder of your colleague, and we can't predict how he's going to react to anyone being near him.
But the photographer, crouching behind his dashboard, managed to get what he came for.
And is this the picture that is taken?
That's the photo.
This is the money photo.
It's the money shot. Robert Tellis, on a scorching hot 110-degree day, is in jeans in his driveway washing the maroon GMC Yukon Denali.
This must have been a moment where, I don't know if there's any cheering going on in your newsroom, but what a development. What does this mean?
Well, it means that possibly Jeff was killed by the last story he wrote about. I mean, this was his last investigation, and the suspect appears to be the guy he wrote about and basically took him out of office.
Without corroboration from police documents, the Review Journal couldn't go with the story. But Glenn Cook was betting it wouldn't be long. His reporters had seen unmarked police cars outside Robert Tellis's home.
We have every reason to believe at this point that it's only a matter of time before a search warrant is going to be executed at that house.
A search that will uncover crucial evidence. As the investigators geared up to serve Robert Tellis with a search warrant, the Review-Journal needed to be sure it would be the first to break the news.
It was important because Jeff was always first, and we wouldn't want to let him down and not be the first.
We polish that story, and then we sit on it until police move in.
In the early morning of September 7th, 2022, just 5 days after Jeff German's murder, Tellis was brought in for questioning as police searched his home and cars. While he was in custody, detectives collected a DNA sample from Tellis. They also took the jeans he was wearing into evidence and gave him a white paper suit to change into before he was taken back to his house and swarmed by reporters eagerly awaiting his arrival.
Did you do this? Did you commit this murder? Did you do this? Can you tell us anything?
Inside Tellis's home, investigators say they found gym shoes and a duffel bag similar to what was seen in the surveillance video. And when they looked in the garage, detectives say they discovered even more. A straw sun hat, or what was left of it.
The sun hat.
The sun hat.
Cut up into pieces.
Yes.
But police say the most crucial piece of evidence would come from the DNA sample that was taken from Tellis earlier that day.
We received positive DNA results that showed Robert Tellis's DNA at the crime scene.
Tellis's DNA was under Jeff's fingernails.
There's no doubt in my mind that Jeff knew exactly what was happening in that split second, and he made sure he got the evidence.
With a DNA match apparently secured, the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department descended on Robert Tellis's home once again and began clearing the area for an arrest.
And this is where he was arrested?
Yes.
Review-Journal photographer Kevin Cannon was one of dozens of media who had been waiting outside Tellis's home that day.
What happens when the cops arrive?
Suddenly, the police said, okay, everybody out. They kicked the entire news, everyone who was here, out.
Where do you go?
So I made a beeline to the front door of a neighbor who I befriended earlier when I arrived, and they, without saying a word, opened the door and welcomed me in and walked me to their backyard where I could have a view of Tellis's house.
And you could still see the house from your vantage
From the
point
backyard,
there.
yeah.
Back in the RJ newsroom, some of the staff anxiously kept up with what was happening at the scene through the office's police radio and heard that Tellis refused to come out of his home.
Our target is still calm on the phone. However, he has made a couple of 405 comments.
405 comments, a code Las Vegas police use to indicate comments associated with self-harm.
It was kind of scary at that point. We were thinking, is this all going to end on his terms now?
Based on the 405 comments, we're going to go ahead and make the official request for SWAT.
Well, my colleagues heard through the scanner that they were going to move in because he had cut himself, and they wanted to save him before he harmed himself more.
And they wanted to get to him.
Right.
The SWAT team made its move, and that's when Kevin got ready.
And so you were positioned, you were ready to go then?
Right. I was ready to go the whole time. I mean, I had my finger on the button the whole time.
Where do you look? What do you see behind you?
Well, I see them rolling him out on a stretcher down around that corner, down that path, out the driveway, and put in an ambulance right here.
Kevin was the only photographer that day to capture Tellis's dramatic arrest. His image of Tellis on the stretcher made the front page of the Review-Journal the following morning.
The next day, I opened the paper, and there was a photo on the front page with the banner headline, "Stunning Arrest," and it was stunning.
And satisfying for you after all that?
Very satisfying.
It becomes huge news, obviously, all over the country.
A reporter allegedly killed by a politician for a story he wrote.
That's pretty unheard of.
After Tellis was treated at the hospital for his self-inflicted injuries, he was booked into the Clark County Detention Center. 6 weeks later, Tellis was indicted by a grand jury for murder with use of a deadly weapon.
Have you plead guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty, Your Honor.
Soon after, evidence from the grand jury was released by the Clark County District Court, including that grainy surveillance attack video.
I think probably what we found some of the most disturbing is the last 3 videos.
Minutes later, it shows the assailant returning to the scene of the crime and parking that maroon Yukon Denali in front of Jeff's driveway.
And now you'll see him walk over and make sure that Jeff is dead.
And you're theorizing he is checking to see if he's dead, because obviously Jeff saw this person.
He wants to make sure that there's not a witness that's still alive.
Seemingly satisfied, the suspect walked back to his car and left. Since his arrest, Tellis has been in jail awaiting trial.
Did you murder Jeff German?
What do you make of the evidence found inside of Robert Tellis' home? See more evidence photos from the case at 48hours.com.
Hey, Robert.
We met Robert Tellis for a video interview at the Clark County Detention Center and began with the question on everyone's mind.
Did you murder Jeff German?
No, sir, I did not.
If you did not commit this murder, who did?
I will reserve that for trial.
You have said that you were framed. Do you stand by that in this conversation?
I do. I absolutely do.
Tellis says he can explain the evidence against him: the torn-up sun hat, the Yukon Denali, and his DNA under Jeff's fingernails.
I say that that evidence, or so-called evidence, was planted, along with the other items that were allegedly found in my home as well. And we will go ahead and prove that at trial.
How could someone who is trying to frame you plant your DNA under his fingernails? How would that have happened? First, they would have had to have gotten your DNA, and then when would they have planted it under his fingernails? It seems far-fetched.
Well, you know, crazier things have happened, and I'll tell you that I didn't kill Mr. German.
Come on, man. That's overwhelming. DNA ends up under his fingernails, your DNA. This is an overwhelming case against you, Robert, that you committed this murder.
Again, sir, you know, you have the facts wrong, and I will demonstrate it at trial.
He also says he will show he didn't do those things German wrote about in his articles.
Robert, you're saying that what these women have said to me, what they told Jeff German and he printed, those are all lies.
If you look at what Mr. German printed, none of it had any facts within it, right? It was all alleged opinion about, you know, how they felt that I acted.
But it's hard to argue with this. The footage the women shot of their boss and his alleged lover in the parking garage.
Let me ask you straight. Were you and Roberta having an affair?
No, she was a confidant. But I'll leave it at that.
But Jeff was not willing to leave it at that. He was planning on writing another piece. According to police documents, Tellis and Roberta got word the day before the murder that there was a planned release of emails and messages between her and Tellis to the Review Journal.
There was a Freedom of Information request that Jeff had put out, and you were told that new messages and emails were going to come out describing the relationship between you and Roberta, communications between the two of you, and it suggested that you made a decision to murder him to try to silence that, to prevent that from being published. What do you say about that?
I say that's a mischaracterization of things. I'll tell you that what was going to be released, and I saw it was going to be released, had no inklings of any type of, you know, confidential relationship, any type of supposed affair. It was all business related. So that would not have been a motivation, because there was nothing that was going to be produced that that would look bad.
Prosecutors have mentioned this as a contributing motive to the murder. In Robert Tellis's mind, Jeff German ruined his marriage, ruined his political career, embarrassed him, and was continuing to report on him rather than leave him alone.
If the intention of the alleged killing was to stop Jeff's reporting, it didn't work. After his murder, the RJ journalists hunted through Jeff's notes
Picking up where Jeff left off.
and completed the stories Jeff had been working on at the time of his death, including another on Robert Tellis's toxic past, a story that investigates claims of sexual harassment, all of which he has denied.
The main thing here is you cannot kill a reporter and kill the story. You just can't do that.
In life, Jeff German was known to protect his sources at all costs. In death, Jeff was still protecting them. After the murder, the police took all his devices, which harbored the names of countless sources. The Review-Journal went to court, and in a hard-fought case that went all the way to the Nevada Supreme Court, the paper won protection for his sources.
That'll be the German rule. That you will not be able to go into a reporter's files. You will not be able to go through their phone. You will not be able to look at their sources, even after death.
These 4 Jeff German sources are not about to let the world forget the reporter who fought to protect them. They have attended almost every hearing, trying to come to terms with their feelings of guilt.
Because no matter what logic is in your head, it's not your fault that Jeff made his choices and that he was a professional. Your heart tells you if we wouldn't have made that call, he wouldn't have died in that violent way that day. And if I was to talk to him today, I think the first thing I would say is I'm sorry, but not for him, for me, because he wouldn't accept my apology. But I need to give it.
Jeff German was a reporter's reporter, one of the good guys, a man who spent a lifetime speaking truth to power. Truths that are now baked into the history of this place. A neon strip of gritty stories laid bare beneath the desert sky.
He told anyone who asked that he was never going to retire, that he was going to report until his last breath, and that's exactly what he did. And he gave his life to this job. He literally gave his life to this job. I think that's his legacy.
Need more time with 48 Hours? Go deep behind every true crime episode with first-hand accounts from 48 Hours Investigations.
Were you at all prepared for what happened in this case?
Shock is the word that comes to mind.
Get inside the twists and turns and get in on the case. Listen to Postmortem from 48 Hours, now available wherever you get your podcasts.